our final speaker in this series, who is a Guggenheim Award-winning artist. One day, I think more than a decade ago, Hasan was stopped at an airport, and he was, where are you? There you are. He had been flagged for investigation. He was interviewed by the FBI, and he told them he was not a terrorist. But the FBI still wanted to keep tabs on him. So he started keeping tabs on himself and sending all that information to the FBI. He started watching himself for them. And today, he is, in my opinion, one of the most insightful artists and thinkers about what privacy is and means in today's society. Please welcome our final speaker, Hasan Elahi.
Hey, folks. Thanks for sticking it out. Just give me 1 second. We have a quick little tech thing that we're going to pull up. And then a little button down here, and we should be going. Okay, so that's me over here, and I'm an artist. So she, like how you're saying, as a physics professor, this is an odd audience to be at a law school. So as an artist, I find myself kind of in a similar situation. But thank you all for sticking around. I mean, I know it's been a ridiculously long day because my head is about to explode with all the information. And every speaker, it's like, there's like, oh yeah, that's what was happening. So as an artist, I'm kind of outside this whole legal thing, but I kind of got caught up in this. So that's me. It's my arrow. It'll make sense in a little bit. So I want to show you a couple of little things. So I got really excited when I saw this hashtag trending, because I mean, I'm a Muslim and I've been reporting stuff for like almost 15 years now, because we need to do this. If you see something, say something. I see stuff all the time. So I'm just like saying stuff. So a couple of things that I want to show you is that so this little you recognize that photo? Kind of where we are. So let's pull up the live version of this. Hopefully you'll get this. So this is where we are right now. So I created this little thing for my FBI agent. So you can see exactly where I am and all sorts of stuff. And it's a live feed. But let me quickly go through some of the things with some of those stuff. So you can see that on November 19th, I spent $2.13 at Rosedale Chevron outside of Bakersfield, California. This was for a chili dog. I like my chili dogs. On November 11th, at Sunday of 2008, by the way, which you don't know the years, but I kind of know them. So I made a phone call from this location, which happens to be north of Grumman's Aerospace Center, right across the street, because I like to hang out in shady places like that. I'm just hanging out, not doing anything sketchy, just hanging out there. Just, November 30th, I just took a ride on the Muni in San Francisco, nothing suspicious about that. May 1st, and there's like thousands and thousands of photos of airports that are scattered. I frequent a lot of empty spaces because I'm not very social and I don't really like people. So most of the places that I'm at are stark and desolate and empty. And similarly, I only shop at the finest establishments that have no products to buy. But, and then there's these personal kind of things, like the food that I'm eating, because these are all things that I basically document my life every few moments, and I send them to the FBI because they need to know. And so this is my favorite fried chicken place in Newark. This is a bed at a hotel in Las Vegas. It's just kind of like, well, what happened there? The bed's a really interesting place because a lot of people are like, well, if you got nothing to hide, well, the bed's one of those spaces that it's like, I don't care what it is. You don't want people watching you there, even if you really are doing nothing. So this is one of those like lines. It's like, especially like if it's your kid, you do not want somebody watching your kid just sleeping. Even if they're not even there, it's kind of gets weird in that way. And also, for full disclosure, all the toilets that I've used, I've shared them with the FBI because they need to know. So if you actually go on the Instagram feed for Color of Surveillance, the hashtag, you might see a toilet. So don't be alarmed. That's me. It's not just somebody just putting all these things. So basically, I've decided to put all this together because after being mistakenly reported as a terrorist. Which was kind of sketchy, kind of scary, but I spent 6 months of my life trying to convince the FBI that I'm not a terrorist. And it's like, look, I didn't do anything. But what had happened is they had received an erroneous report that an Arab man fled on September 12th who was hoarding explosives. Now, never mind, I'm not Arab, but that Arab man would be me. But all those brown people, they're all kind of the same. So, and the logic was that, well, who's that guy? He's got a Muslim name. If you got a Muslim name, then you must be Arab. And if you're Arab, then you must have explosives. I mean, doesn't everybody know this? So this is the kind of lie. It sounds kind of ridiculous, but this isn't actually, so I've decided to, in order to protect myself, I've decided to basically live totally transparent. I've decided to open it all up, and it might sound like a drastic measure, but it's not such a crazy harebrained idea. So actually, there's a performance studies guy over at Northwestern, and recently befriended him, and he wrote this really nice passage about me, about my project of being a performance of the law for the law. So it's kind of like being legal and continuously verify, because during the whole thing that was happening with the FBI investigation, I knew whatever was happening outside the law. And with the magic wand of national security, which is all you need, I mean, who knows what can happen. So, but really, so when I first started this project, people thought I was crazy. Why do you want to send photos of everything that you're at and everything that you're doing and all the food that you're eating? And now they're kind of like, now sometimes I'll talk at universities, they'll be like, I don't get it. This looks like my Instagram feed. But, so it sounds really crazy, but whether we're aware of it or not, we're all doing this. We're all doing this every time we're online, every time we share anything online. I mean, really, look at this. As of March, there was 1.9 billion monthly users on Facebook. That is the largest country in the world. That is nearly 1 out of every 4 people in the world's population. It's nearly 25% of the world's population is a monthly user on Facebook. Now, compare that number to the number of people worldwide that have access to reliable health care, that have access to reliable water, electricity, education. This is an astonishing number of how many people are actually connected who are essentially doing this. And in the same way, the majority of a lot of these users are connecting on mobile devices, the very same mobile devices that every aspect of our life can be monitored and tracked. So let's go through this. So this is the photo I just took a little bit ago. You recognize this right up the stairs from here. So, but this is what the computer is actually seeing. So, you're seeing the EXIF. So this is, it's telling you this is the pixel dimensions, this is the time and date that I took it, and all sorts of stuff. But here's where it gets really interesting. So you can see that, so we know that it has latitude and longitude. So when you uploaded a photo, do you want to upload from Georgetown Law? So it knows it but it also knows altitude, because the image taken at the 20th story of a building is very different looking than the image taken in the ground level. In the same way, if you look at the angle, the distance bearing and the image direction, 81.425925925,925. That's the angle the camera was pointed at. So, just a few years ago, there was a crazy thing. It's like, you mean Google is going to drive up and down every single street, photograph everything? Yes. And not only they do it repeatedly, year after year after year. So just as how Google has archived every external space, it's only a matter of time before every internal space is archived in the same manner. And which the data, you can restitch and recreate every internal space very soon. So what about those selfies? And the selfie totally gets no respect, but here's, President Obama trying to make it look respectable. I just could not use Trump in this one. So I had, and by the way, we think of selfies as being relatively new. This is the earliest selfie photo that I found, 1926. I mean, this is the earliest selfie photo. But, let's go back to the selfies, with the selfies, and it's okay if you take them. The camera is usually pointed in, but, when you look at thousands of my photos, which now there's been about 90,000 uploaded, they're all going outward. They're all like facing outward. But what about those cat photos? This was my cat. He died a couple of years ago. He was 20. He's amazing. This dude is amazing. And that's how you would sit most of the time. But we know cats invented the internet. Now I know there's some internet experts here. No, cats invented the internet. So similarly, my buddy Owen Mundy did this project called I Know Where Your Cat Lives. So so you go into and it shows you a random cat and it shows you where it lives. Pretty cool, huh? Well, assuming that we know where the cat lives, we can probably assume where their cat's owner also lives. I think this is a really beautiful work in terms of looking at privacy and art and cats, of course, because who doesn't love cats on the internet? Have you ever looked at your location services on your phone? It knows exactly what minute you walked in, what minute you walked out. It keeps track of everything. I know many of you people in the room are aware of this. There's got to be at least one person that's never looked at it. Look at it. It will blow your mind. Your phone is spying on you, really. When you look at your emails, those are the most, these are the most personal narratives of our daily lives and everything that's going on. Google searches, I don't even want to know what Google knows about me. It's kind of scary to think about it. All your searches. Have you looked at your health app? the data that's kind of steps, it knows how many stairs you climbed because it knows the altitude or where you're moving. It knows how many steps you've took this direction versus that direction at this minute or that minute. So cross-reference all of this, and we very quickly have a very complete picture of who owns this device. So really, look, the data is being collected, and this is an absolute fact. So short of giving up our phones, we're already transparent. We are totally living this transparent life. The question is, but for whom? Now, back in the old days, intelligence agencies, why would they waste their time following you around and doing all this stuff when this magic device that you have in your pocket is already doing that? Now, look, I know Apple says we don't share our data. We don't share our data. But hey, look at this. Does this look familiar to some of you? This is from Snowden. Yeah, look, it doesn't say these are PRISM providers, not when we intercepted each of them. And you could clearly see, it's like, these are like when each provider joined the program. So this is, so the things are, it's kind of a little different. So my thing is like, hey, if the NSA can get this from us, why can't we just give it to each other? Why can't we just do this on our own? And so really in 1998, science fiction writer David Brin came up with this in his book, Transparent Society. Basically it's two parallel cities. In city one, well, in both cities, everything's recorded. There's cameras everywhere. In city one, everything goes to the police. In city two, everything goes to everybody else. So it's just this mass transparency, and it's broadcast to everyone. So really, in thinking about the world today, I'm convinced that surveillance is not going to go away, no matter how much we object to it. We're way too far in to get out of it. It is not reversible at this stage. Yes, it's great that we can have, but we need to have different ways of resistance. And what I'm really thinking about is the concept of surveillance versus sousveillance. Instead of watching from above, but watching from below. Instead of a single big brother, thousands of little brothers looking up and pointing that camera backward. There are twice as many cameras than people there are in this room, at least possibly 3 times. Every one of you are carrying at least 2 cameras on your phone, one in the front, one in the back. On your tablet, there's one in the front, one in the back. On your laptop, there's another one, there's another camera there. So there's quite possibly 3 to 4 times the number of cameras than people. There's several probably in here as well. There's 2 over there. Just when you count, it's like, this is ridiculous. There's so many cameras out at any given moment. So really, instead of thinking of something that surveillance can be done to us, I'm thinking, how can we use it to watch the watchers? We can use this as a tool to watch them. So I want to show you a couple of early artists that have been dealing with this. So the Institute for Applied Autonomy is a brilliant group of artists, hackers who created this project back in 2001. And the reason I say that we're too far in, we need to actually watch the watchers, is back in 2001, these folks created this app called IC. And it gave you a path of, it gave you the, it's like Google directions and the maps, and except, actually, I guess back then it would be called MapQuest. And it would give you the path of least surveillance cameras. And, they would give you these like crazy cockamamie routes, but at least it was possible to give you the path. You simply cannot do this project today. There are way too cameras. This is impossible to do this today. So, by the way, in the 10 years between 9/11 and 2011, in those 10 years following 9/11, it's estimated that nearly 30 million cameras were sold in the US. That is roughly 1 for every 10 persons in this country. And think about population densities and how that maps back out. And the numbers are only growing, and the cameras are just keep going. And again, cameras are just the beginning. Amazon already knows what you want to buy before you know it. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't really want that, but yeah, I wasn't thinking about it, but I really could use that. Like Netflix, you might like this, and you're like, yeah, I do like that. So it goes to this, and then this famous story, and how Target knew a pregnant teenager before their families. This is all kind of like crazy stuff, but no, it's not the crazy stuff. This is the new normal. As algorithms get smarter, search results will become more accurate, everything will be tracked, everything will be archived, everything will be indexed, and as difficult as it may be to accept, this is the new reality. And it's not a question of whether this is better or worse than it was before. It's simply, it's that our fundamental ideas of privacy have changed. And despite that we want to hang on to this early, non-existent, simpler version of privacy, it never existed. If you think about living in a small village 200 years ago, everyone knew everything about everybody. And even in a small town today, everybody knows everybody's business. So, except now that little town's gotten a little bigger and we're kind of living in a different century. But really, so instead of pining for a time that's impossible before this surveillance, let's counter it by dissolving the boundaries between public and private information even further. So, what I'm arguing is in a world where surveillance is so normalized in the functioning of governments and businesses, and it's basically the business model for big corporations, transparency is resistance. And okay, why do I say that? So back in 1994, spring of 94, Critical Art Ensemble, this other group of artists and theorists and hackers and writers, and so they wrote this thing in Electronic Civil Disobedience. Methods of resistance must be refined, and new methods of disruption invented that attack power non-centers on the electronic level. Now, let's put this into thought. What did the internet look like in 1994? Like this. So they were doing this at a time when it wasn't even Mosaic 1.0. I mean, it wasn't like Netscape. Yeah. Now, we know how much our daily technological lives have changed drastically since 1994. Yet our ideas of privacy and surveillance really have not adapted much. We're still thinking as if it is 1994 or even earlier, 1894 for all practical purposes. So there's very little similarities between them. So really the dichotomy of public versus private is obsolete, and it's giving away this new and urgent way of privacy and transparency. So, which is not just about regular people, but it's also about going back to watching the watcher. So I want to show you this. This is my log file that I keep track of, and I'm watching the people that are coming to my website, looking at my stuff. And so you can see all the hits that have come in. There's some shady three-letter organizations. Many of you might be in the room. So I made a nice little list for you so you can see this. And so, it's like, so for some reason, like the CIA comes by on a regular basis, or the National Reconnaissance Office, or all these. I don't know why they come by, but I'm really glad that we have patrons of the arts in this town. And I'm very glad that the government appreciates, art on the internet, and they come by and they look at, they like the photographs of toilets, I guess. So a few years ago, I recently moved to this area, and I work at the University of Maryland. And when I say Maryland, a lot of folks just assume it's in Baltimore. Actually, our law school and med school are in Baltimore, but everything else is in College Park, which is right here, right down the street. So that you can see the Beltway, that's where College Park is. This is the FBI headquarters, this is the CIA headquarters, and this is where the NSA is. You triangulate the three, it ends up smack in the middle of our campus. Vice magazine ranked us the most militarized university in America. We are the #1 school as far as militarization. We got to be #1 in something. Football's going to take a little bit. Anyway, so let's go back over here. I want to show you this. So, when I got here, and you folks that live in this area, you know how expensive real estate is. It is not, this is no joke living here. But I found this cool place out on the Eastern Shore. So, it's like, you can see, it's not actually that, but it's like $74,000, where the average listing price is $797,303. And by this is in St. Michael's. So it's a nice little neighborhood. It's a very bucolic, gorgeous place, about an hour and a half, hour and 15 from here. So let me show you this. So this is the land. This is the lovely thing. And then, you see that nice little, the pathway with the fancy trees and all that. And then there's another house over there. It belongs to this guy. And I really have to thank Dick Cheney for launching my art career, because if it wasn't for Dick Cheney, none of this would be possible. And I really miss sane world leaders like Dick Cheney. I miss those days of that type of oppression. So, anyway, so going back to his house, so, we're going to be hanging out here. And by the way, so when you leave anybody been to St. Michael's? Out of these, okay, so when you leave St. Michael's, go down Railroad Street. Railroad Street splits, and it becomes Mount Misery and Church Neck. So the reason it's called Mount Misery is because at the end of that road was the old Mount Misery plantation, which belonged to Covey, and Covey was a brutal slave breaker. A particularly problematic slave that was sent to Covey was a young boy by the name of Frederick Douglass. The Frederick Douglass began his rebellion in this house at Mount Misery. That house today belongs to Donald Rumsfeld. So anyway, he's just up the street from us. So we're going to hang out, and Dick and I are going to hang out over here. Let me show you around the neighborhood. Because this is so we're going to go around. This is his driveway. This is he's got a 5-car garage. 2 of those go back pretty deep. Darth Vader loves wisteria. This is his swimming pool. We're going to hang out. I mean, this would be a great day to be hanging out in the pool in the summer. This is his front room. This is his kitchen. This is where he sleeps, and this is where Dick and I are going to sit and plot world domination in his attic. He's got a nice place. He's in that Wyoming. He likes that Wyoming decor, and this is what I'm planning on building. I'd love to build this house in front of his house. It's like there goes a neighborhood. But really, what happened is there went the listing. The listing just disappeared. So basically what they are, they've kind of become these conceptual paintings. So I'm now actually making photographs of paintings of photographs of Dick Cheney's house. So I figured that by, I think probably the listing, the property wasn't sold, it wasn't withdrawn, it just disappeared. Probably kind of like what he does to some people, if you cross him in some bad way. But here's the thing. Okay, look. I'm not trained in this stuff. I'm not a technologist. I'm an artist, and I just kind of know just enough to duct tape technology together to make it work for me. So if I can get this information, if I can show you we're the most secretive man in the universe. Here's a guy who had all the resources in the world. Not only we're talking about the former CEO of Halliburton, we're also not only talking about the former vice president, we're talking the former CEO of Halliburton. Money is no object. Motivation is no object to remain private. And if I can show you his information, what can he get about us? What can entire companies do that? So I want to leave you with this one last line, which is, publicity is justly commended as a remedy for social and industrial diseases. Sunlight is said to be the best of disinfectants. Electric light, the most efficient policeman. Justice Brandeis wrote this over 100 years ago, and I think it's time we revisit them. So thank you very much.